So it amazes me still that a lot of Sandy Hook researchers haven't heard about this Ann Haddad story. I think it's mostly because it gets covered up pretty well, and now that they're trying to remove all the videos, that's helping them as well. But there's been more stuff that has come to light regarding Ann Haddad, and my video Top 10 Reasons, it's now been taken off YouTube completely. I thought I had saved a backup of that one. I hadn't. It's still viewable on Vimeo. But what I'm going to get into now is just how this grand deception worked on Ann Haddad being Nancy Lanza. And I'm 100% convinced personally. It's okay if you aren't, but just watch the information. And I am pretty confident by the end of the video you will also be convinced, because it proves all the holes in the story. It fills all the holes in the story. It explains a lot of stuff that's been missing from Sandy Hook, and it explains how the grand deception worked. The Ann Haddad grand deception. Okay, so the first point I'm going to go into in this new video here, it has to do with her being a teacher at Sandy Hook. As we all remember, originally we were told that she was a teacher at the school, and this wasn't just from articles. This was from testimony from a lot of people.
I mean, I knew her, we lived in the neighborhood, so I knew her through neighborhood events. My mom knew her. I mean, she was a very nice woman, a kindergarten teacher, obviously.
She was fairly traumatized, but I did ask if it was known around this school that this young man, apparently a kindergarten teacher's son, was an issue, whether he had any problems, and she said not at all. And I asked if she knew the suspect's mother, and she said she did, and that she was an absolutely loving person and a very caring, experienced kindergarten teacher.
And these aren't the only two examples of people who said that they saw her and she was a teacher at the school at Sandy Hook. And it was just article after article saying that she was a teacher there, and then they changed it to she was a substitute teacher, and then they changed it to she was a teacher's aide, and then eventually they just got rid of it all. They said, no, she wasn't a teacher, all these people are nuts. This mom who says she was a teacher at the school, who they never named, they won't even talk to her again, like, hey, you said she was a teacher, but now we're saying she's not. So forget her being a volunteer at Sandy Hook from 1998 to 2012. Forget her being a teacher at the school. Forget multiple people who said they saw her and knew her as a teacher at the school. Because her name doesn't match up, she is officially, that was just wrong. Because her name doesn't match up. Not because people didn't see her there all the time. They didn't see a woman who looked just like Nancy Lanza at the school a lot. Okay? And that's what's so important here. And now if we go into this next interview, this is a woman, this was taken the day of Sandy Hook. It's pretty amazing this woman would give an interview so soon, but notice what she says here when asked if she knew the teacher. This is a very telling interview.
Joining us now is Abby Clements, a second-grade teacher at Sandy Hook Elementary. She was evacuated from the campus this morning. Ms. Clements, I have no words. Thank you for being with us.
Sure.
The young man who is alleged to have been the shooter, Ryan Lanza, who was identified, his mother teaches at the school. Is she someone that you knew well?
No, I can't really figure out who that is.
Nancy Lanza, that doesn't ring a bell?
Can you say the name again?
Nancy Lanza. Lanza.
The last name does not, so I don't know if that's her maiden name or if it's, so I don't know.
No, that's fine. I'm not trying to push you to talk about anything. I just didn't know if you knew that.
No, it's very confusing because I'm listening and it doesn't match anything that I heard, but you can imagine we're all trying to figure out what happened, but at the same time we don't want to know what happened.
So it's interesting that she says, well, the last name doesn't really ring a bell. That means the first name, Nancy, did ring a bell. And that was somebody that she knew that probably taught at the school. That person being Ann Haddad, Ann being a nickname for Nancy. She was going by Nancy as she worked there. And another interesting thing is, this Abby Clements is the same person who Ann Haddad had her child in her classroom. So again, when Abby Clements is asked if the name Nancy Lanza rings a bell, she says not the last name, because Ann Haddad was going by Nancy, and when she was doing her little volunteer work at Sandy Hook Elementary, likely. It's an important part of the story that people need to understand. They need to understand why there was this huge confusion, and parents were saying they saw Nancy Lanza working there. The school nurse said she was a great elementary school teacher. The Israel girl says that she was an elementary school teacher. People keep saying that because they saw a woman who looked just like Nancy Lanza at the school, and it was a woman who was likely going by the name Nancy, and that woman was Ann Haddad. And then, so how do we know that Ann Haddad has some sort of a teaching background? Well, if she even mentions it on a little donation page she sets up, where she says she was they were both teachers of special needs children. Teachers of special needs kids, okay? And then, another little interesting thing here, if you type her name into Google Maps anywhere near the East Coast, guess what pops up? St. Rose of Lima pops up. And anybody who's looked into Sandy Hook a lot realizes St. Rose of Lima was like a sister school to Sandy Hook, and there was all these bomb threats called into St. Rose of Lima saying they were going to finish the job and all this other stuff, which definitely connects the two schools. St. Rose of Lima was supposedly where Ryan Lanza attended, Ryan being the same person as Adam. So his mom being a teacher at the school would make sense, because Ann Haddad worked at St. Rose of Lima and then subsequently volunteered at Sandy Hook, just being called Nancy, and if anybody asked her last name, she'd probably just say it was Lanza, and that wasn't her name. And that's where all the confusion came from.
Identified his mother teaches at the school. Is she someone that you knew well?
No, I can't really figure out who that is.
Nancy Lanza, that doesn't ring a bell?
Can you say the name again?
Nancy Lanza. Lanza.
The last name does not, so I don't know if that's
okay.
her maiden name or if it's, so I don't know who
no, that's fine.
One of the past addresses listed by Ann Haddad was 1 Mill Street, Port Chester, New York. If you go to that address, you find a small little bar called Sam's Bar and Grill. It's about 40 miles away from Sandy Hook. Okay, so looking into this bar and grill more, who do we find sitting inside who's a regular attendee at this bar and grill? None other than Caitlin Roig, one of the main players in this entire event. It just happens to be sitting in this bar and is a total regular of Sam's Bar and Grill. A bar and grill that for some reason Ann Haddad has listed as a past residence. Okay, hers was, in one it's listed as 1 Mill Street number 2, Port Chester, New York, but in others it's just listed as 1 Mill Street. So that's a little bit strange to me that Caitlin Roig would show up in an address listed by Ann Haddad in another state over, and just hanging out in a bar, main player. I mean, you would have to be a big believer in coincidence theory to let all these things go. It's to me means they're connected. They've somehow met through this bar, and that's how they get their little scam buddies. Probably have a few rounds, decide, hey, yeah, you want to make some quick money? It's gonna be really easy. So anyway, so now I'm going to get into some of the other main points. I've already mentioned briefly that Ann is a nickname for Nancy, just like Bill is a nickname for William. So you could just say, hi, I'm Nancy, and it wouldn't be strange if they found out your name was Ann. Ann was married to a Peter, just like Nancy was married to a Peter. Okay. So just a coincidence that Nancy is married to Peter in both of these situations, and they look exactly alike. Let's see, what else? They live less than a mile away from each other and would use mostly the same roads to exit their neighborhood. Okay, so that's pretty convenient. Yeah, they're both special needs, teachers of special needs children. They both attended monthly Mom's Night Out meetup.
Mothers from the Newtown Brookfield East Moms Club. It's an organization in Newtown and Brookfield that gathers stay-at-home moms, and we give each other an outlet just to be together, to organize play dates, to do civic functions. And tonight, one of our former moms, whose kids have aged out and are in school now, sent an email around and thought that since we lost some of our children that were in the club, that we needed to gather.
I don't think there's too many monthly Mom's Night Out meetups in the small town of Sandy Hook. So it's a little coincidental that both of these women supposedly were seen around town via their Sandy Hook meetup. And wouldn't it be strange if you went to the Sandy Hook meetup and these two ladies are sitting next to each other? They looked exactly alike, and you're thinking, hey, are you girls sisters? I'm sure that was never asked, because it was just one person at the meetup, of course. Mrs. Ann Haddad being called Nancy. Of course, this strange Annie Haddad, Ann Haddad character has about 7 aliases, and her name is spelled differently in every single article she's in. I'm sure it's just a coincidence that she has so many different aliases. Because every time you look into these false flag events, people have they have different names over and over again, and they have a lot of aliases. I don't know anybody who has 7 aliases. Annie Journo, Annie Sweeney, Ann Haddad, Ann P. Haddad, Ann E. Haddad. The list goes on and on. Nobody has this many names. No normal person has this many names. Another interesting point is that Ann Haddad, the woman who looks exactly like Nancy Lanza, happened to sit on the Sandy Hook PTA next to Manfredonia and a whole bunch of the other key players who were later interviewed or supposedly lost their kids in this event. That's pretty interesting. She's on the Sandy Hook PTA. She looks almost exactly like Nancy Lanza, if not a complete dead ringer. And nobody says, hey, that woman kind of looks like Nancy Lanza. Does anybody else have a problem with this? She's on the freaking Sandy Hook PTA. She looks almost exactly like Nancy Lanza, if not exactly like Nancy Lanza. And nobody mentions that they look alike. Kind of like the Mom's Night Out meetups, where nobody mentions that she looks a lot like this other woman in the Mom's Night Out meetups.